This is Jerome Corsi, and today it's Wednesday. It's March 6th, 2024. You can follow me on X at Corsi Jerome 1, all low letters all together. And on Substack, it's Jerome Corsi PhD.substack.com. Thank you for joining us here on thetruthcentral.com. We're doing podcasts every weekday. First story I want to cover has to do with the Federal Reserve and this very good piece that is written by Ron Paul. He's going into, Ron Paul has always, I think, been good on economics. I knew him when he was in Congress and interviewed him several times. So Ron Paul starts out by saying, according to the Federal Reserve, the credit card delinquencies increased by 50% in 2023, while consumer debt grew to $17.5 trillion. These are all-time highs. This is pretty outrageous numbers. A recent survey by the Cleaver Real Estate found that 3 in 5 Americans have credit card debt, and 23% of Americans increase their credit card debt every month. The survey also found that 48% of Americans, including 59% of millennials, use credit cards for essential living expenses. Okay, now this is disturbing because it means that Americans are living on credit. It means that their income is not sufficient to support their monthly needs. And the overlying reliance on credit cards and the increase in consumer debt are consequences of the fiat money system, which this is what Ron Paul is saying. Since Richard Nixon severed the last link between the dollar and gold in August 1971, the dollar's value has declined by 87%, based on the government's understated consumer price index numbers. This means that even though Americans' nominal wages have increased, their real wages have declined as the dollars buy less. It's pretty simple economics. But it's frightening because this amount of debt is unsustainable. Unsustainable word that the United Nations likes to use when they want to cut back your living style and kill people. You know, the whole deconstructionist, depopulationist agenda of the left is now becoming obvious. But back to Ron Paul, the continuing erosion of the dollar makes it impossible for many Americans to accumulate meaningful savings. Those Americans who can save may actually lose money by doing so, thanks to the Federal Reserve's inflation tax that keeps eroding the value of savings. So, this is a frightening situation. The reliance on credit cards is one of the basic reasons why many Americans are dissatisfied with the economy. It's obvious. And that investors and businesses have become accustomed to these interest rates at near net zero, at zero under Obama, which the Federal Reserve was doing to make sure they propped up Obama's lousy economy. Well, the Feds just can't keep interest rates low forever without causing a major dollar crisis. It's going to happen, either because the dollar is rejected as the world's reserve currency. At that point, rates are going to skyrocket, and consumers and businesses that have been relying on debt to cope with the federal dollar's destruction are going to find that the piper's at their doors demanding to be paid. Eventually, this credit has to be paid. So Ron Paul's point is that the collapse of the fiat money system and the accompanying welfare warfare state is going to happen, that we're at the doorstep of that happening. And I think he's right. Gold today is trading on the futures market at over $2,100 an ounce. That's the first time historically that's happened. And so gold is now approaching an all-time high. Gold in the actual market for gold, not the futures market, but the actual market, is, I believe, about $2,083 today. I'll double check that while we're talking about it, but I'm pretty sure that that's what it's at. I looked at it earlier this morning, and just take a quick check at the chart of gold. Yeah, it's at, Here we go. Gold is right now trading at $2,134 an ounce on the real market. $2,134. I've been predicting this now for months. And in fact, months ago, I wrote this book. You can get a free copy of it. And I recommend you do, because what I'm predicting is happening. And if you want to really see the underlying trends here, get this book, How the Coming Global Crash Will Create an Historic Gold Rush. I wrote it with Dean Heskin, who's the head of Swiss America. Call Swiss America, 1-800-519-6268. And you get a copy of this book, How the Coming Global Crash Will Create an Historic Gold Rush. And I point out that when we go through economic crises, as we did with Jimmy Carter in the 1970s, gold doubled in price. It doubled in price again in 2007 and 2008 in the subprime real estate market. We're going to have a collapse here of the commercial real estate market that's around the corner. It's about to happen. I see gold going to easily $2,200 or $300 an ounce. And I don't think it's going to take very long to get there. I think gold could start trading at prices of $3,000 an ounce. That's now envisioned. I can see that happening. And if you don't get onto it now, you're going to get onto it after you've missed an opportunity to gain hundreds of dollars per ounce in your investment, especially with your retirement savings. And you better get professional advice if you want to put your IRAs or your 401ks in gold, because you have to do it according to the rules or you lose your tax-deferred status. Again, the number to get this free book is 1-800-519-6268. Okay, let's keep moving. I want to cover quite a bit of ground today. The Super Tuesday was yesterday, and Donald Trump won every state in Super Tuesday, except, I believe, for Vermont. And Vermont went with Nikki Haley. Of course, they hate Trump these days. In the New England used to be solidly Republican until all the Democrats couldn't stand Boston anymore and moved north. Same thing they do in California. They wreck California, then they move to other states like Texas and wreck it with their stupid liberalism. Okay, so here we go. Victoria. Well, first of all, I'll get to that in a minute. But Haley, Nikki Haley, really ruined her whole career. Took money from Democrats, ran against Trump. Trump is just decimating everybody who opposes him. I see it left and right. Trump is beating everybody. Fannie Willis down in Georgia is now a disgrace, a laughing stock. This is the nature of Soros justice. You know, you get a criminal attorney general or a prosecutor who is leftist and woke and decided that, you know, men can have babies and men can have menstrual cycles, and they're in charge of law enforcement. Well, of course, she's going to put her lover, who got divorced, with all kinds of government money so they can go on luxury vacations. Nothing wrong with that. But gold is at an all-time record high. And what this indicates is that we are essentially seeing a destruction of the U.S. economy, a conscious destruction of the U.S. economy, and a destruction of the dollar. The forces that hate the United States, which include the Democratic Communist Party, are out to ruin the United States in order for them to create their utopia, their socialist utopia, in which we're going to have to celebrate minor attracted adults, as if this new identity. Joe Rogan did a great number on that yesterday, a great number saying, you know, this new identity sounds pretty, it sounds nice, it's like, you know, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. Yeah, well, you know, Joe Rogan made the point yesterday, I thought very effectively, that transgender story hour is just men wearing dresses acting up in front of children who are confused by the entire sad, satanic demonstration of we have to celebrate their genitals. Well, I'm personally sick of it. I'm tired of having to celebrate all these bizarre sexual. Who cares? They want to go have transsexual, you know, sex. Let them go ahead and do it, but don't put it on the television, on the front page of the newspaper, or in story hours for children. This is ridiculous. And, you know, we're getting stories coming across like this story that the gang members outnumber the police 22 to 1 in the city of Chicago, and the ratio keeps getting worse. City of Chicago has become a time bomb. This is a story that's being covered by Michael Snyder, and he does good work over in discernreport.com. So city of Chicago has become a time bomb, and it is a prime example of a very disturbing trend that's happening all over America in these rotten Democratic-controlled cities. Why would anybody vote Democratic unless they're insane? Criminal gangs are thriving in most of our major areas, and Joe Biden's open border policies are greatly fueling their growth. With each passing day, more deeply impoverished young immigrants pour into our cities, and many of them are quickly recruited by the gangs. Surprise, surprise. So a number of years ago, Chicago was outnumbered by the gangs, outnumbered the police 10 to 1. It's doubled. It's now 20 to 1. Chicago Police Department has identified more than 280,000 gang members in the city of Chicago. Of course, they can't do anything about it, because if they try to indict them, they'll just be released by these criminal judges who are also gay, whatever they are, identity prone. They're all injected with this critical race theory. As Michael Snyder points out, this is the size of a small army, 280,000 gang members running Chicago. Of course, they want to defund the police. What they get is they get roving gangs coming into the downtown area and destroying retail businesses. Okay, so Chicago, again, overall major crime up 23 in 2023 by 16%, robberies up 23%, and there's likely significant underreporting of crimes given police shortages. Over half of high-priority 9/11 calls did not have an officer available to respond when the call came in. Why bother even running 9/11? This is a ridiculous situation. And now squatters, the left is teaching people how to go to occupy unoccupied properties and use the law to make it difficult to throw them out. This is insanity. Our lawfare is destroying our schools, it's destroying our courts, it's destroying our police, it's destroying our cities, and it's intended to do that. That's the hard part to get your mind around. This is intentional. It is not, the left knows exactly what it's doing. If you just read the book I've written, and others are good, people are catching on to this now. The book I've written is called The Truth About Neo-Marxism, Cultural Maoism, and Anarchy. This is an ideology that is a mind virus, this critical race theory. Say, oh, well, you can't have discrimination. We're a racist nation. We were founded by slaveholders. We also fought a little civil war here in which we freed the slaves. And that's not discussed in the communist textbooks that are being taught to our children today in the public schools. Get your kids out of the public schools. The Donald Trump surge makes it clear that the American people see past the lawfare, see past the Democrats, see past what's going on, and we are facing a crisis in America, which is a crisis. It's a spiritual battle, and we're losing the spiritual battle. I'm going to come back to it again. But Donald Trump is standing above it all, despite being prosecuted over and over again. How many prosecutions this guy got? 1,000? And finally, the Supreme Court threw out this 14th Amendment nonsense. And of course, the Democrats in Congress now want to pass a law saying that Trump is an insurrectionist and they can use the 14th Amendment. These people are insane, and Congress is completely corrupt. By the way, I've been attacking Mitch McConnell for years, and I finally saw an article out here about Mitch McConnell, which I was very pleased to see, that in fact Mitch McConnell has been compromised by his wife, Elaine Chow. I was at the Heritage Foundation and said this, and the woman who was moderating the session had worked for Elaine Chow, and she attacked me for doing that. And I said, I tried to be polite and say, yeah, well, I didn't come here to attack Senator McConnell, but Mitch McConnell. But as soon as the name was mentioned, I jumped on it because I know Mitch McConnell to be completely corrupt. And the article I was pleased to see, I'm going to pull it up here. I didn't post it, but I did read it this morning, was in fact that Elaine Chow has been, it's on Zero Hedge. Evidently on February 12th, this 50-year-old Angela Chow, who is the sister of Elaine Chow, Mitch McConnell's wife. She was found dead in her Tesla that was submerged in a pond on private property in Blanco County, Texas. Okay, so she was the youngest daughter of the Chinese American shipping magnate, who is Dr. James Chow. He founded the New York headquartered Foremost Group in 1964. And this Angela had been CEO of the company since 2018 and was a founding member of the Asian American Foundation. Now, what the article points out is that Mitch McConnell, when he married his second wife, Elaine Chow, in February 1993, they became a power couple in Washington. She eventually served, Miss Chow served as U.S. Secretary of Labor from 2001 to 2009 and Secretary of Transportation from 2017 to 2021. Now, Peter Schweitzer, I thought, and I've known Peter for years. He's a brilliant reporter. And it was that 2018 book, Secret Empires, How the American Political Class Hides Corruption and Enriches Families and Friends. That's what's going on. And it's going on rampantly in Washington. Schweitzer noted that McConnell had always taken hardline positions in communist China, and then he got married to Chow. And that seemed to change. His hardline positions softened when he was invited in 1994 by the Chinese State Shipbuilding Corporation to meet the leaders of the Communist Party in China. And Schweitzer maintained that McConnell would, quote, increasingly avoid public criticism of China as additional meetings and visits were conducted over the years. Perhaps that shift was facilitated by $1 million gift from James Chow to Mitch and Elaine in 2008 that increased McConnell's net worth nearly tenfold. That's the story. That's what goes on in Washington, D.C. That's how you buy the government. Our government is for sale. I wrote a book in 2011 called America for Sale, and I was talking about this very phenomenon, how our politicians would sell out America for $1. So this suspicious death occurred at a ranch that's owned by a corporate entity connected to this Chow's husband, Jim Breyer. Her death is under criminal investigation. Yeah, well, I don't know what they're going to find there. But this Foremost Group placed an order of $168 million with a subsidiary of the state-owned China Shipbuilding Corporation. This is a wealthy family. And Mitch McConnell is the best speaker, the best Senate majority leader that money can buy. Thank you, China. So China owns Mitch McConnell, and he's Senate majority leader of the GOP. He got to be in prison. I mean, he sold out the country for money. Married this Chinese woman and decided suddenly that China is a wonderful place and we ought to be all in love with China. Another story out today about how China is really conducting massive cyber crime, cyber war with the United States and trying to undermine us without having to fire a single shot. And we're doing nothing about it. Thank you, Joe Biden. Of course, Joe Biden's also owned by the Chinese with Hunter Biden. Of course, we're not allowed to say anything about that. All right, one story I was very pleased to see is that Victoria Nuland is going to leave the State Department. She's running for the Hills. Steve Bannon did a number on her yesterday. And she is the one who is she's been the Secretary of State for Political Affairs. She has been behind the entire push to get Ukraine in NATO. She also was behind the Russian collusion nonsense. This is Elaine Chow, best friend, I guess, Victoria Nuland, as they destroy the United States of America. Russia has said for decades that Ukraine in NATO was a flashpoint for them. And Putin has warned repeatedly now, back-channeling through Tucker Carlson, that if NATO decides to arm, which it's doing, and go to war against Ukraine, there will be nuclear war. And these demons, and I really mean satanic demons who are in our State Department, our CIA, our Pentagon. What is the name of this admiral who wears a dress all the time? I can't even remember his or her name or its name. What's the proper pronoun for some bizarre human being is this nature that we have to salute? No wonder you don't get recruits. I mean, pretty soon we're going to have a homosexual army, or maybe it's transgender. That's sure going to fight a war effectively. Okay, well, we could just leave another bunch of material in Pakistan or Afghanistan or wherever we are so the terrorists can use it against us. So Victoria Nuland is a complete communist as far as I'm concerned. Insane. The Democratic Party hates Russia because Russia renounced communism after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And since the Democratic Party has been moving to be a communist party since the 1950s and now is there, a hate America Communist Party. Thank you, AOC. These people do not deserve to be in Congress. They deserve to be tried for treason, as does George Soros, corrupting our judicial system and pushing out criminals into the streets. These people are insane. And by the way, the Gateway Pundit, I think correctly, is saying that Victoria Nuland is running for the hills because they have FOIA requests to get documents on her, and it's only a matter of time until her role in this Ukraine nonsense has been exposed. And don't be surprised if we find out that she benefited financially from selling out America too. Would not surprise me. And so she can join Nikki Haley, and if this is the GOP, you can have the GOP. Trump is not GOP. He's running as a Republican, but finally I think the Republican Party is going to have to accept Trump, or it's going to become itself obsolete. That's the problem. The CIA, as well as the Pentagon, have both been completely corrupted by all of this woke nonsense. So, as Ukraine, and another good story on the Gateway Pundit today. What did the CIA know, and when did it know it? As Ukraine careens to a political and military disaster, which it's doing, it's time to ask, why did the CIA fail to predict this? They failed to predict almost everything. The CIA is now believing its own propaganda. And so the Western plan was, I think the Gateway Pundit, simple, audacious, and delusional, using Ukraine as a military proxy to defeat Russia and humiliate Vladimir Putin, apply Western economic sanctions that would devastate the Russian economy. They didn't. All Putin did was turn to India and China and sell his natural gas and oil there, and back away from the dollar and booster the ruble with gold, something we should be doing. No, we're not going to do that because we don't need any gold in the Federal Reserve. We've got a printing press. We'll just print all the money we need. Okay, so all of this nonsense that has been propagated by the U.S., this U.S. intelligence agencies, CIA, our military, the State Department, and the Democratic Party propping up Ukraine is for two reasons. Number one, they like the corruption. They like the money laundering, because you can't run the drug cartels, and we are the drug cartels. The CIA has been in the drug business since before World War II, the OSS, in Southeast Asia. So they like the drug business. It's cash off the books. Then they can do their dirty ops with it. And so therefore, the banks, I caught HSBC in 2011 doing massive money laundering for the drug cartels. You don't think the CIA and the Department of Treasury knew about that? They monitor every wire transaction that goes on in the world, especially with the NSA. This is all nonsense. This is a Truman Show, which hides the fact that our bureaucratic state is running us into the ground. And we need to we need to move the entire federal bureaucracy to Death Valley and let them have all the wind and solar that they want. That's the only solution to it. Okay, now if we continue with the stories I posted today, I want to go to a couple more that I think are really critical to cover. And first, let me just pull it up here. Okay, first story, I've covered about 3 or 4 more we're going to cover today, so stick with us. The Ukraine situation is also compounded by Europe trying to arm Ukraine. So there are hundreds of Czechs and a handful of others, Ukrainians, are now working round the clock in the Czech Republic to transform a collection of buildings dating back to World War II into a hub for supplying arms and ammunition to Ukraine. It's part of the effort to provide Kiev with enough weapons to repel the Russian forces after the stalling of U.S. military aid, which has been the backbone of international support. Finally, the GOP is realizing the American people are sick and tired of this lying and this corruption, and are sick and tired of the Ukraine war. We don't need a nuclear war with Russia unless you are satanic and you want to destroy and kill life, which the State Department seemed in Victoria Nuland. Just take a look at Victoria Nuland. Go get a picture of her and just take a look at her. Okay, so they're supplying arms. They need a huge amount of ammunition. And Russia's on the advance. Russia is now poised. If they want to take Kiev, they can make a move on it. I think Russia will take Odessa. Just a matter of time. It's the last port on the Black Sea that Ukraine controls. So for every shell Ukraine fires along the front lines, Russia fires between 5 or 6. Okay, they're not running out of weaponry in Russia. Ukraine's ability to suppress Russian attacks and provide cover for its own troop movements is decreasing. Russia's increased weapons production can maintain a much bigger rate of fire than Ukraine. And so the Western experts say Moscow also faces constraints and has turned to North Korea to bolster its weapon. Russia's getting weapons from North Korea. They're getting drones from Iran. All of these forces have been united against the United States. China and Russia have come together. And thank you, our State Department, Victoria Nuland, Barack Obama, who's engineered this. These people want to destroy America, and they're doing a very good job of it. Okay, and the Ukraine is the most corrupt country on the face of the earth, and that's why our politicians like it so well. Democratic Party's made a lot of money in Ukraine, and Mitch McConnell's made a lot of money in China. He's certainly not going to go after Biden for doing the same thing. If any of these people are in office, it's time to vote them out. Just vote against any incumbent, but don't put Democrats in there because they'll be just as bad. You'll just be giving a new group the opportunity to get rich. Okay, let's continue on here with the other stories today. There's a very good story coming out about the Houthis, who now are saying that they're going to demand that ships coming through the Red Sea, either to or from, going to or from the Suez Canal. This is the shortest route to India and to China from the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. The Houthis feel confident. They've never been really held accountable for any of their violations. They've been attacking shipping in the Red Sea. They let Russian ships pass unless the Russian ships are headed to Israel. So now they're getting ready to ask for permits to identify ships for safe passage through this narrow straits getting out into the out towards India from the Red Sea. So Russia and China-owned vessels would receive safe passage as long as they're not headed to Israel. And the Houthis are not being damaged by these airstrikes because Biden is not serious about it. They may be attacking where there are these drones, etc., but they're not attacking and killing the Houthi rebels. If you don't do that, you're not putting them out of business. What Israel is doing right now in Gaza, it's finding and killing Hamas. And the most recent reports I read this morning coming from Israel is that the attacks on these various cities in Gaza, the Hamas is trying to get out, escape by mixing in with the civilian population. The problem for the Hamas is that Israel intelligence has identified who they are, and they're able to recognize them with facial IDs and other technology, even when they try to slip through the net by mingling with the population, or the Hamas shields themselves by operating from within hospitals or in this tunnel network. Israel looks to me like it's determined to root the whole thing out. And we're doing nothing about the Houthis. The Biden administration is doing nothing. We have an expanding war in the Middle East with Hezbollah in Lebanon, which now we're seeing the Israelis having attacks, air attacks, deeper into Lebanon to get these Hezbollah rebels controlled. We're having the Iranian National Revolutionary Guard attacking our bases in Syria and in Iraq. Of course, the Biden administration's got its thumb up its behind. It doesn't know what it's doing. They can't. Our military, these generals in dresses and admirals in dresses, don't know how to fight. And so all they do know is spend more money. The Pentagon, by the way, also can't account for $1 trillion that it was given by Congress. Trillion here, trillion there. Pretty soon we're talking about a lot of money. So with these permits, now you're basically going to have the Houthi rebels operating like they were a government, and they're going to control shipping in the Red Sea, and our Navy can't do a thing about it. In fact, our ships and Russia's ships in the Black Sea are prone to missile attacks from Ukraine to attack the Russian ships in the Black Sea, and within the Gulf area, we're vulnerable to the Houthi rebels launching attacks and drones and other things against our naval ships. And we've degraded our military to the point where these admirals in dresses don't know how to deal with it. Sad. Maybe they should resign. And by the way, they should take their mandates with them. All right, here we go with so the Houthis are in control there. We have expanding war in the Middle East. Biden administration can't do anything about it because Biden is mentally incompetent. So our Justice Department says it's why he can't be prosecuted. I mean, reporting this stuff is insane. I mean, it's like the world is controlled by nutcases, which I think is increasingly the case. Then there's a story about the border invasion. So Epoch Times sent a group down to this pass in Panama, which they have to all come through, the Darien Gap. And it's a stenching place. The story starts out, Darien Gap, Panama, the ripe smell of garbage baking in tropical sun mixed with the stench of human waste is one of the first things visitors noted at Bajo Chiquito, one of the 4 large migrant camps in the Darien Gap. This Darien Gap is where they have to pass through, and many of these migrants, in fact, virtually all of them, are subject to being raped. They have stolen, beaten. They get to these camps possibly without money. But last year, 500,000 migrants traveled through the Darien Gap. And the Epoch Times visited all 4 migrant camps in Panama, and what they found was the same situation. The United Nations and related non-governmental organization, NGOs, receive millions of dollars in U.S. taxpayer money. They've made mass migration easier by facilitating and augmenting the migrant movement with food, shelter, and water once they get there. But the reporter spoke with migrants from China, Somalia, Venezuela, Ecuador, and Colombia, and others who have hiked out of the treacherous jungle leading from Colombia into Panama. I'm just going to read a paragraph here. Many of the camps, from the Epoch Times, many of the camps suffered from injuries and illnesses such as trench foot and broken limbs. Several complained that the water was untreated at the camps run by the NGOs, and they lacked essential items like diapers. One migrant told the Epoch Times that food supplied to the camp was stale or spoiled, so he spent $7 to buy a meal from a local vendor. Others say they were stranded at the camps because they were robbed during their journey and couldn't pay the $60 needed for the bus ride north. The number of illegal immigrants entering the United States has surged under the Biden administration. It's estimated that 3.2 million immigrant encounters at the U.S. border occurred in fiscal year 2023. That's probably a record. One of the quotations here, and these NGOs in the UN are just, again, stealing money, not providing anything to these migrants. These migrants are being used as human ammunition. Trevor Loudon, who's a good friend of mine, I've worked with Trevor for years. He's a brilliant expert on communism. He said most migrants are oblivious to their role as human ammunition. That's what Trevor Loudon is saying, is that this is a plan, these bureaucrats with fat salaries, eating at nice restaurants and having good old time facilitating one of the biggest crimes against humanity that's ever been perpetuated. That's what Trevor Loudon is saying. He's right, because what's happening is that the communists running our government, working to destroy America, thank you, China, know that by bringing in all these migrants, opening our borders to terrorists, to criminals, to anyone who's dangerous, controlled by the drug cartels at the border, and the NGOs getting fat and wealthy, the American Red Cross getting money, the NGOs getting money, and the migrants are being largely the abuse. They're being used as human fodder to come into the United States and ruin the United States. Immigration, from the communist point of view, you change the demographics of a country, you undermine the country by changing its culture. That's the whole goal here. And with the criminals that we're bringing in and the criminals we're releasing from our own prisons, America is becoming unsafe. And eventually, when our middle class realizes it can't pay its credit card debt, our money is becoming worthless, the nation overrun by immigrants who are really not invited here. The only thing I can think is that most of the Latin American immigrants coming into the country at least believe in God, which is better than I can say for the democratic population of the United States, which has gone largely satanic, I believe, and not really realizing it with this critical race theory agenda, which is pure communism. It's not about social justice. It's about DEI. So you get a black president of Harvard who has plagiarized her or its dissertation to get there. Who cares? We're not teaching anything in the schools except racism, 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 racism. And they become racists, thinking that it's their job to save black people. Well, when they do interview the black people have plenty of IDs, and there's no reason they can't register to vote like everybody else should be doing. But instead, let's end with this story. And then I'm going to come to Chris for comments. The Downfall of San Francisco. This is written by someone who's loved San Francisco and grew up in San Francisco. It's Katrina Trenko, and she's talking about the San Francisco I knew, which was a beautiful place. Weather was great. The Bay Area was spectacular. You could take the subway from BART, get off at the Powell Street station. There was a huge mall there. Of course, now the mall, which Nordstrom had several top stores of the mall, Nordstrom's pulled out. So now this beautiful mall is becoming a ghost town. Nordstrom shuttered that store in August last year, transforming the top half of the mall into a ghost town. Gap and H&M both closed in recent years. They are not outliers. Out of the 203 stores operating in Union Square, only 107 remained as of May. Why have they shut down? Because it's not safe. Crime has escalated. You have people running around with machetes in Union Square. And San Francisco's, woke mayor, London Breed. Isn't that a great name? London Breed. That's amazing. Pushed back the idea that crime contributed to the decision by Macy's to close, telling the San Francisco ABC affiliate there's been a significant decline in crime. These Democrats lie, make things up, and create new identities, minor attracted adults, as if that's okay. We can't talk to children about sex without ruining the child's life. Child doesn't know anything about sex. Then you take the child away from the parents, put them into sex slavery. Go watch the film Sound of Freedom if you want to know what it's really about. And so she's lamenting in this article all the beauty of San Francisco that has been ruined, the filth, the feces in the streets, the crime. It's become a Democratic-run, crime-ridden hellhole that concludes San Francisco, Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Philadelphia. Run down the list. Washington, D.C. This is insanity, but it's intended to be this way. The Soroses who have architected communism into the Democratic Party know exactly what they're doing, and it is demonic. I'm going to end on that theme in a minute. Chris, thank you for monitoring all the way through this. What are your thoughts as we covered these stories today?
I guess you're telling the world that London breed is falling down.
That's a good one. I like that one.
Well, I have two other good ones for you.
Okay, go.
Okay. Yesterday, or Tuesday, if you will, Anthony Blinkin and the Qatari Prime Minister were doing a joint press conference.
Our genius Secretary of State, our genius woke communist Secretary of State, Anthony Blinkin. Don't blink because it's Blinkin.
Well, I was kind of hoping you'd bring me in with the Houthi thing. I should have mentioned this before we started the program, but he was appealing to the Houthis' human side.
Yeah, right.
No joke. I have a recording of it if you want to hear it.
Oh, yes.
Just read a quote.
No, just play that. I want to hear it.
All right, we're going to do this. Give me a few minutes because this is hilarious.
It's got to be a joke. It's got to be a ha-ha right here.
Well, you know what? It's an unintentional ha-ha. How about that?
Okay.
I was, when I heard this,
I like the way he's holding his hands here. Look at the little heart symbol. He's virtual signaling with his little heart symbol in front of his belly.
There you go.
Let's hear this pathetic Secretary of State mumble whatever he's going to mumble.
The ship that they attacked is now sunk to the bottom, and the result of that is that there's a huge fuel slick from that ship. So that's creating a potential environmental disaster. At the same time, we've seen the Houthis attack ships that are bringing food, grains, to the people of Yemen, the very people that the Houthis purport to, in some fashion, represent. And of course, it's had a dramatic impact on shipping around the world. That's going to have an impact for a lot of people in higher food prices, energy prices. But in Yemen itself, in the region itself, environmental disaster and a huge impact on the ability to get food to people who so desperately need it in Yemen. So if the Houthis care at all about their own standing, their own reputation,
okay, that's enough.
The way in which they're seen by the world, they will stop.
So he's shaming
the Houthis care at all.
He's shaming the Houthis as if they care. This guy got a brain or what? He's our Secretary of State. Why does he do something about it?
The man was pleading with a terrorist organization that wasn't a terrorist organization under Biden for a while.
An environmental disaster. What does he call it? The EPA. They could find the Houthis.
If the Houthis care about their standing around the world, no, they don't. They care about the money they get from Iran. They care about celebrating when they bomb a ship or something like that. Now they want everybody to pay toll. So we think it's a great thing.
Our Secretary of State doesn't understand crime, doesn't understand terrorists, doesn't understand violence, doesn't understand evil.
Right.
That's why he's Secretary of State. So he can virtual. Now look at his hands at the end of this. He went for the heart symbol. Now he's got him down by his crotch. His hands folded and swinging there. I mean, what is this guy going to turn into a transsexual next?
Well, maybe he's bucking for
who knows?
Yeah, maybe he's bucking for a position in the Department of Health. But here's the other thing: the one person, and as far as the primaries are concerned, the one person who lost bigger than Nikki Haley.
Who's that?
That would be Comrade Barbara Lee.
Barbara Lee. Okay, what about
Lee? Adam Schiff and Steve Garvey finished 1 and 2 in the California primary, which puts up a head-to-head competition between a Republican and a Democrat for the first time in quite a while. Except this Republican has a name, but Barbara Lee barely finished. Couldn't even finish third, even though she was supposedly popular in her own Bay Area. Katie Porter got more votes than her, which was pretty embarrassing for the last, Barbara Lee's last hurrah.
Well, you know, it's looking at when you look at that map right there, California, you see that the blue Democrats are only at the strip along the Pacific Ocean. The rest of California is mostly Republican. It's all red. And I'm going to comment on that for a minute. But look, go back to the map, Chris. I want to show that the people who are watching this in a video, and I'm describing it for those audio, if you just cut off that part right by the San Andreas Fault, if you just drop that into the Pacific Ocean, you'd get rid of about 90% of the problem in California. Because all those, it's just the people along the coast with the money and their liberal guilt, their mansions looking out in the Pacific Ocean, and the rest of the people in California in the interior who are wanting to live, a reasonable life. They don't have the Hollywood money to produce demonic films propagandizing America. Don't
forget the urban blight. The urban blight's a big part of that.
Well, all these cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, these cities are ruined but you don't think that's going to bother them in Santa Monica or, any of these, Santa Barbara. I mean, all these places in California, which are controlled by the Democrats, are the same in terms of their inability to stop people from living in the streets. You're just going through all the counties, looking at all the votes. The Democrats control these areas with the poor cities,
Right.
where they're just people pouring into them on welfare. This is going to crash the dollar for sure. And I don't think there's a solution to this problem, quite frankly. Of course, maybe Blinkin come back in and he can talk about how these Californias are ruining America, but he's gonna shame the Houthis. Next, maybe he's gonna shame then the Iranians. The Iranians are certainly gonna be shamed if he comes after and says that the Iranians are terrorists. Maybe they're causing environmental hazards with their nuclear program. Do you think that would bother Blinken?
He'll appeal to the human side of the polluters.
Yeah, the Iranians' human side.
Right. If they worry about their standing in the world, then they won't do the polluting.
They might not be invited out to a trendy dinner at the United Nations the next time. All right, let's wrap this up. I mean, this is enough. In the end, God always wins, and I'm sure when God looks at this insanity, God is saying to himself, it's time for a judgment here on these people. And who would blame him if he did? The remedy at this point is 2 Chronicles 7:14. We've got to get down on our knees and ask for repentance for the millions of children in the womb who have been cut to pieces by these demons, sold for their body parts. That's all they're worth, is their body parts. And I'm continually going to Archbishop Vigano, who's written some brilliant things, and he's described what the Democratic Party has become with these globalists, the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, as this neo-Malthusian project of mass extermination. It's evil. He's saying the rulers of Western states, hostages to Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab. Well, certainly they're hostages. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein. The current trend in Washington is to hold sex and drug parties for Congress, senators and House of Representatives invited, to be filmed and blackmailed. If they can't be bought, they can be filmed and blackmailed, having sex and cocaine in sex orgies, paid for by the communists, the World Health Organizations, the Economic Forum, the Chinese who want to corrupt them. If that's bad enough, they'll send them Chinese to marry them, who can then certainly corrupt them. So the rulers of all these Western states, hostages, this I'm reading from Archbishop Vigano, have become accomplices to this crime, demonstrating their malice and premeditation by their behavior, falsifying data, rigging elections. This is a whole set of practices, publishing scientific data that's falsified. So in this attack, unprecedented in the history of the human race, we've witnessed the complicity of all national and international institutions, entire medical profession, and the media. A social engineering process has been carried out to manipulate consensus through terror, threats, blackmail, violation of citizens' most sacrosanct fundamental rights, including children. He said, we are well aware of the preparations of this crime against God and humanity, and that this is a spiritual battle. And the part of this, what he's written, I continue to read and think about, is this paragraph. And we'll pretty much end with this. The global coup d'etat must be denounced. Those responsible must be tried and judged by an international court. Archbishop Vigano, Catholic, who was the papal nuncio of the United States until he started criticizing Pope Francis, and then he was removed from that position. But he continues to write. I'll continue to read him. But above all, it is necessary for all of us to understand that this is an all-out war against humanity. It's not motivated only by the lust for wealth and power, but mainly by a religious motive, a theological motive. The reason is Satan's hatred, hatred of God, hatred of God's creation, hatred of man who is created in the image and likeness of God. Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, George Soros, and the hundreds of servants whom they blackmail in governments all hate God. They hate life, which only God can give. They hate love, which comes only from God. They hate peace, which can only reign where Christ reigns. As Tucker Carlson said a few days ago, we are facing people who serve Satan and the demons of hell, just as normal people worship and serve God. That's true, but they don't win. They're going to go to hell with Satan, get locked up there forever, hopefully, or at least 1,000 years. For Satan, hopefully, will not get ever released again. We have to understand that the Democratic Party is going to run for president on the woman's right to choose, which means they're going to run on killing more babies with abortion. This is a party that wants, it's a death cult. It's become a death cult. And as such, we need to reject it. We need to renounce it. We need to renounce Satan and renounce the demons that Satan has put into our politics, into our public schools, into our news media, into every institution in America. Thank you, Claudine Gay, disgraced former president of Harvard University, my alma mater. Harvard is a disgrace, and so are all the other universities. And they're not teaching these kids anything that are going to be useful to them in the rest of their lives. They're teaching them not to be married, not to have families. We're producing a dysfunctional generation. But it will end. We will have a judgment of God, and hopefully it's not a nuclear war. Hopefully that's not the plans, CIA's October surprise to cancel the election and make sure Donald Trump doesn't become president. I think that could happen. That's why I'm talking about it now. In the end, God will win, and we have to do our part. And our part is shining the light of truth on this insanity. And as those listening wake up and see this, we can renounce it through the courts and through voting. And we have to watch the polls. We have to be alert to the polls. We have to get rid of this mail-in balloting, which is designed in order to facilitate cheating. God did not create the human race to fail. And so I believe here we will go through a very dark period of time. These are end days, but we'll come out of it. And God willing, we will be spared the worst that could happen. It's Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today is Wednesday. It's March 6, 2024. We'll be back every weekday. We'll be back tomorrow. Thank you for joining us. God bless.